Commander Area Hughes stood on the observation deck of the Vigilance, gazing out at the endless blackness of space. She had spent over 2 decades in the United Earth military, and in that time, she had grown to become one of the most respected strategists in the fleet. Area had always believed in humanity's most sacred rule: never start a war. The idea of war, of bloodshed and destruction, was something she had worked tirelessly to avoid. But now, in the quiet hum of the ship's command center, the weight of her mission pressed on her more heavily than ever before. Her orders were clear: investigate the rising tensions between the human colonies and the K-Tari, an alien faction whose very name sent shivers down the spine of anyone who had studied their history. The K-Tari were technologically advanced, but they were also fiercely territorial and had a reputation for acting aggressively when they felt threatened. For years, their expansion had pushed ever closer to human borders, and while the United Earth Government, UEG, had done everything in its power to maintain peace, there were whispers in the shadows of a war that was all but inevitable. Arya's mission was to determine the truth behind a strange energy signal originating from Ceta-9, a remote K-Tari world on the edge of their territory. The signal had been intercepted only days ago, and while its origin was unclear, its message was not. It was a call to arms. The K-Tari were planning something. Whether it was a diplomatic move, a military buildup, or something even more sinister, the UEG wanted to know, and Area had been tasked with finding out. As the Vigilance approached the orbit of Ta-7, the human-controlled outpost closest to K-Tari space, Area prepared her crew for what could be a volatile mission. The station's tech crew would analyze the signal's source, while Area and her most trusted officers, Captain Marco Rivera and Lieutenant Ava Nash, would be tasked with investigating Ceta-9 itself. If the signal was a prelude to war, they would need to act swiftly. The orders from Earth Command were clear: gather intelligence first, but if the threat was confirmed, initiate preemptive strikes. It was a directive that made Area's stomach turn. Her entire career had been built on avoiding such a conflict, and now she was faced with the possibility of sparking it herself. "Commander," Rivera's voice broke her from her thoughts. "We're within range of the signal. The tech team is starting the analysis now." "Good," Area replied, turning from the viewport. "Let's get to work." Minutes stretched into hours as the tech crew worked to decode the transmission. The silence aboard the ship was oppressive. Area could feel the unease settling into her bones, an anxiety she couldn't shake. Everything she had worked for, every belief she had held about peace and diplomacy, was being called into question. Was it really as simple as following orders? Or was there something more complex at play? Suddenly, a sharp tone blared from the comms panel, cutting through the tension. Arya's heart skipped a beat. "Commander, we've got an unexpected transmission. It's coming from deep within K-Tari space. It's a distress signal." A hush fell over the room. The K-Tari were not known for asking for help. Their pride, their military might, everything about them screamed strength, not weakness. If they were reaching out, it could mean only one thing: something was very wrong. "Patch it through," Area ordered. The screen flickered, and the image of a K-Tari officer appeared, his face grim. His uniform was worn, and his eyes betrayed a deep exhaustion. "This is Commander T, or of the K-Tari Navy. We speak to you in desperation," the K-Tari officer said, his voice tinged with an emotion Area had never expected to hear from one of them: fear. "Our planet, Ceta-9, is dying. The energy core that sustains our world is collapsing. The effects have already begun to spread, poisoning the atmosphere, destabilizing the ecosystems, and causing mass destruction. We have no time left." Arya's brow furrowed in disbelief. The K-Tari were preparing for extinction, not war. Their planet was crumbling, and they had resorted to reaching out for help, something she had never imagined would happen. Tia's voice grew more desperate. "We will do anything to survive. If you come to us, we will. We will offer you anything: our technology, our resources, our allegiance. Please. Our people are on the brink. If you do not act swiftly, Ceta-9 will become a graveyard." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving Area in stunned silence. The situation was far more complicated than she had ever anticipated. The Qatari weren't preparing for war, they were preparing for their own extinction. And in their desperation, they were willing to strike a deal with anyone. Arya felt the weight of the message settle over her like a physical burden. If she followed her orders and initiated the preemptive strike, humanity would likely destroy the Qatari. If she ignored her orders, she risked letting the Qatari fall into oblivion, or worse, allowing them to drag humanity into a conflict they had no desire to start. She was no longer just facing a decision about a potential war. She was facing the very moral core of what it meant to be human. "Commander," Captain Rivera's voice interrupted her thoughts. "What are your orders?" Arya stood frozen, her mind racing. The peace she had fought for her entire career now seemed so fragile, so easily broken. Could she uphold humanity's sacred rule in the face of such desperation? Or would she have to make a decision that could change everything? "We need to go to Ceta 9, she said, her voice steady despite the storm of conflicting emotions inside her. "We need to see for ourselves what's happening there. And we need to decide whether humanity's first duty is to protect itself or to preserve the peace." As the Vigilance turned its course toward Ceta 9, Arya knew one thing for certain. Her mission had just become far more complicated than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy's fate, and perhaps her own, rested on the choices she would make in the coming days. And no matter what, humanity's sacred rule would soon be tested in ways she could never have predicted. The Vigilance was now in orbit above Ceta 9, its crew waiting anxiously for Arya's next move. After much deliberation, Arya had made the difficult decision to halt the military offensive and focus on investigating the strange energy signal. It was a decision that went against her orders, but she couldn't ignore the deep unease gnawing at her. Something didn't feel right about the situation. The distress call from the Qatari had been clear, and her years of experience told her there was more to this than a simple military buildup. As the ship's sensors scanned the planet below, the true nature of the signal started to emerge. Arya stood in the command center, her fingers hovering over the display, watching as the data streamed in. The signal was not a weapon or a military asset as Earth Command had feared. It was something far more ancient. It emanated from a massive energy anomaly deep within the Qatari capital city of Zorath, a location that had been off-limits to outsiders for centuries. The signal itself was chaotic, a pattern of bursts and waves, but there was no mistaking it. This was a cry for help. As the team analyzed the data further, Arya's heart sank. The anomaly wasn't just a weapon, it was an alien relic. An artifact buried deep within the planet, its power capable of altering entire ecosystems. The Qatari had unearthed it. The planet's once habitable ecosystems were in a freefall. Crops were dying, oceans were rising, and the atmosphere was beginning to crack and warp. "Commander, we've traced the source of the relic's power," Lieutenant Nash said, her voice trembling with urgency. "This thing, it's not just a weapon, it's a planetary engine." Arya absorbed the implications with a deep sense of dread. If this relic could alter the very ecosystems of the planet, what else could it do? And why hadn't the Qatari told anyone? The distress signal had painted a picture of a species fighting for its survival, but now it seemed there was more to the story. "Something's off," Arya muttered to herself. "This wasn't supposed to be a simple diplomatic mission. There's something they're hiding." As Arya continued to dig deeper into the data, a new revelation shattered any lingering trust she had in the Qatari leadership. A recording from one of their top engineers revealed that the Qatari leadership, specifically Prime Leader Zorthak, had not only concealed the truth about the relic's true potential, but was using the device for something far more dangerous than survival. Zorthak's plan, it turned out, was to harness the relic's power to create an artificial paradise on Ceta 9. His vision was a world of endless resources, untouched nature, and eternal prosperity. But Zorthak's idea of paradise wasn't just about saving his people, it was about dominance. To achieve this vision, he intended to terraform neighboring worlds, including human colonies, by draining their ecosystems and using their energy to fuel Ceta 9's transformation. The cost? Countless lives across the galaxy. Arya could hardly believe what she was reading. Zorthak, in his desperation, had become so fixated on saving his people that he was willing to destroy everything else to do it. The Qatari were not simply facing extinction. They had chosen to throw their moral compass out the window in favor of a dangerous, all-consuming desire for survival at any cost. Zorthak's willing to sacrifice millions, maybe billions, just to save his own people, Arya said, her voice cold with disbelief. He's turning Ceta-9 into a graveyard for the galaxy. He's planning to sacrifice everything else just to live. The realization left Arya reeling. The mission had been complicated enough, but now everything she thought she understood about the Qatari, the situation, and her orders was in question. How could she justify fighting alongside a species that was willing to destroy everything else for its own gain? But as she struggled with this moral dilemma, a new piece of the puzzle arrived, an unexpected ally in the form of a Qatari dissenter named Thalira. Once a high-ranking officer under Zorthak, Thalira had defected after discovering the true nature of the relic and the terrible plan Zorthak was preparing to set in motion. She reached out to Arya through a secure channel, offering her critical information about the device's capabilities. "Commander," Thalira's voice crackled over the comms. "I need to warn you. If Zorthak activates the relic as he intends, the entire galaxy's ecosystem will be irreversibly altered. The ripple effect of this machine is beyond anything we've ever encountered. It could destabilize entire solar systems." Arya's mind raced. Thalira's warning only confirmed what she had feared: the relic's power could be catastrophic. But there was more. Thalira claimed that the Qatari leadership was hiding the truth from their people. Zorthak had manipulated them into believing the relic could save them, but in reality, it would only cause their extinction, accelerating the ecological collapse. "You have to stop him, Commander," Thalira urged. "If you don't, it won't just be Ceta-9 that dies. It will be the entire galaxy." But something in Thalira's tone sent a shiver down Arya's spine. Was she truly an ally, or was she just another player in this deadly game? Could she be trusted, or was she simply trying to manipulate Arya for her own ends? Before Arya could respond, a new transmission came in, and her heart skipped a beat. It was from Earth Command. "Commander Hughes," General Roland Nash's voice filled the comms. "You are to neutralize the Qatari threat immediately. The UEG cannot allow this instability to continue. You have our full support." Arya's stomach tightened. Nash, her former mentor and trusted ally, was now commanding Earth's military forces. He had always been an advocate for peace, a voice of reason in the face of overwhelming odds. But his words now held a chilling weight. Something had changed. There was a sense of urgency in his tone that was new, a quiet desperation that Arya couldn't ignore. And then, the final blow, Nash's next words, made Arya's blood run cold. "I've aligned with the Qatari, Commander. Together, we can use the relic's power for humanity's benefit. I trust you'll see the wisdom in this decision. It's time for Earth to secure its place in the galaxy." Arya's grip on the comms console tightened. General Nash, her mentor, was aligning himself with Zorthak, hoping to harness the power of the relic for humanity's own gain. The betrayal stung, more than she could have imagined. Earth, the very government she had sworn to protect, was willing to sacrifice its morals, its values, just for the promise of power. As she stood there, reeling from the discovery, Arya was faced with a painful realization. The war she had always feared was no longer a distant possibility. It had already begun. And the true battle wasn't just between the Qatari and humanity. It was for the very soul of her species, and the future of the galaxy itself. Now Arya had to decide whether to stand with her former allies or join forces with Thalira and the Qatari dissidents to stop Zorthak's madness. Her next move could save or destroy the galaxy, and she had no idea who she could trust anymore. The Vigilance shot through the atmosphere of Ceta-9, descending deeper into the planet's core, where the ancient relic's energy pulsed with increasing intensity. Arya and Thalira had only one goal now: stop Zorthak from activating the device before it could rip apart the galaxy. But with every step, Arya felt the weight of the truth pressing down on her, a truth that had turned everything she thought she knew about the universe upside down. They reached the chamber where the relic was being held, an ancient structure of jagged stone and alien metal, eerily untouched by the passage of time. As they approached, Arya couldn't shake the sensation that they were walking into a trap. The relic before them was vast, its energy crackling with a sinister power. But the more Arya examined it, the more she realized something wasn't right. This wasn't just a Qatari weapon. It wasn't even Qatari in origin. Thalira stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the relic. "I knew there was something off about it," she said softly. This isn't of our making. The Qatari were never meant to control it." Arya's pulse quickened as she pieced together the fragments of what they had uncovered. "What do you mean? What is it, really?" Thalira hesitated, her voice almost a whisper. "It's a relic of the Athari, a species long extinct. None of us understood the full nature of it. The Athari were an ancient race, older than anything we know. They didn't just terraform planets, they rewrote life itself. This device isn't for controlling ecosystems. It controls the very DNA of everything it touches." Arya stared at the relic, her mind reeling. DNA manipulation? The device could alter the fabric of life, turning entire ecosystems into a twisted mirror of whatever the wielder desired. The Qatari weren't simply fighting to survive. They were dancing to the tune of an ancient power they didn't fully understand. How could they not know? Arya's voice trembled with disbelief. "Why didn't they tell us?" Thalira's eyes darkened. "Zorthek's government has been hiding the truth for years. They believed it was their salvation, but they didn't realize what they were dealing with. The Athari weren't just a race, they were a force. This relic was meant to destroy, not to save." Arya's stomach churned as she understood the full extent of what was at stake. If Zorthek activated the relic, it wouldn't just destroy Ceta-9 or terraform nearby worlds. It would rewrite the very foundation of life across the galaxy. Every species, including humanity, could be fundamentally altered in ways they couldn't predict. The chaos that would unfold was unimaginable. The stakes were far higher than she had ever imagined. But in the face of this overwhelming truth, the dilemma that Arya now faced was agonizing. Destroying the relic could prevent the chaos, but it would likely annihilate the Qatari species in the process. The relic was their last hope for survival. Without it, the Qatari would face extinction. Arya couldn't shake the thought that, despite everything, these beings who had shown so much desperation deserved a chance at life. But then there was the other possibility. If Zorthak succeeded in using the relic's power, the entire galaxy's ecosystem could be altered beyond recognition. The delicate balance of life would be shattered. The consequences were too vast to predict. The weight of the decision hung heavy on her shoulders. But there was a deeper question. Should she tell the truth to humanity? The full truth, the knowledge that they were caught in a web of cosmic manipulation, with forces far older and more powerful than they could comprehend pulling the strings? The very idea of revealing such information was terrifying. Humanity was not ready to face the fact that they were pawns in a much larger game. And yet, Arya realized keeping this secret would only postpone the inevitable reckoning. She turned to Thalira, her face grim. "What should I do?" Thalira's voice faltered. "The truth will be a poison, Commander. But it's the only way to ensure the galaxy's survival. There's no easy way out." Before Arya could respond, a communication ping echoed through her earpiece. It was a secure line from Earth Command. Her heart skipped a beat as General Nash's voice filled the channel. "Arya," Nash's voice crackled through the static. "You've done well getting this far. I know it hasn't been easy, but now it's time to do what's necessary. Humanity's future depends on the relic. Don't let your ideals cloud your judgment. We need that power." The coldness in his voice was unmistakable. Nash wasn't the man she had once trusted. He had become something else. And in that moment, Arya understood the depth of his betrayal. He wasn't just seeking to manipulate the relic's power for humanity's benefit. He'd embraced the idea that humanity had the right to reshape the galaxy at any cost. "You've crossed a line, Nash," Arya said, her voice hardening. "I won't let you use this relic to rewrite the galaxy. Not for humanity. Not for anyone." There was a long pause on the other end before Nash replied, his voice laced with bitter disappointment. "You're making a mistake, Arya. A mistake you'll regret. I've given you a choice, but if you refuse, I'll do what's necessary. Even if it means we're enemies." Arya felt the weight of his words like a physical blow. Her relationship with Nash, once her mentor and ally, was shattered in that moment. The clash of ideals was undeniable. Nash believed he was securing humanity's future, no matter the cost. Arya believed she was protecting the galaxy from a power beyond anyone's species' control. The love and trust they had once shared felt like a distant memory. "Goodbye, General," Arya said quietly, cutting the communication. With Nash's threat lingering in the air, Arya realized that she now stood at a crossroads. She had to decide: destroy the relic, ensuring the survival of the galaxy, but condemning the K-Tari to extinction, or allow the relic's activation, risking the devastation of the galaxy's life force for an unpredictable future. She was no longer just a soldier. She was the final line between a broken past and a future that was uncertain and dangerous. But there was something deeper in her heart, something she couldn't ignore. Humanity had always prided itself on its ability to change, to adapt, to overcome. Maybe it was time to take that same leap, one that could change the very fabric of the galaxy forever. But to do that, Arya would need to make the hardest choice of her life. And that choice was still ahead. The air was thick with tension as Arya, Thalira, and a handful of K-Tari dissidents rushed toward the facility housing the relic. Every step brought them closer to a confrontation that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The K-Tari, once fierce and proud, now seemed like mere shadows of their former selves. Zorthak, their prime leader, stood on the precipice of the device, his eyes wide with desperation and fear, as though he had lost all grip on his own humanity. The relic stood before them, its alien metal pulsating with an unsettling energy, its presence suffocating in its immensity. Arya could feel it deep in her bones, the power that could change everything. She could already hear Zorthak's voice in her mind, urging her to let him use it. The K-Tari needed this power, he argued, to survive, to escape extinction. But Arya knew better now. She knew what it truly represented, a tool for control, not salvation. "Zorthak, stop." Arya's voice cut through the silence, sharp and commanding. Her eyes locked onto the K-Tari leader. "If you activate that device, there will be no turning back. You're playing with forces you don't understand." Zorthak's eyes flickered with something close to panic. "You're too late, Arya. It's already begun. The relic will save my people. Don't you see? I must do this for us all." Arya's mind raced as she considered her options. Time was slipping away. She had learned too much to let Zorthak wield this power unchecked. But if she destroyed the relic, it would tear apart the K-Tari civilization. Their culture, their memories, everything they had known would be erased. The K-Tari, as they were, would cease to exist. The thought gnawed at her. Could she truly condemn them to such an end, even if it was for the greater good? Then the answer came to her, though it was a bitter one. If she used the relic, it could force the K-Tari to change. If their biology was rewritten, their warlike nature could be erased. Perhaps they would learn peace, perhaps humanity would be spared a conflict that would devastate both species. But as she stepped forward, her resolve firm, Arya understood that the decision would come at a price. A heavy, irreversible price. "Thalira," Arya whispered, "I need you to prepare the device for activation. It's the only way." The dissident K-Tari looked at her, understanding the cost of what she was about to do. "I'm with you, Commander." Together, they approached the relic, and Arya's hand hovered above its core. She hesitated, taking one final look at Zorthak. In that fleeting moment, something inside her snapped. She wasn't fighting against him anymore. She was fighting for something greater than both of them. She was fighting for a future where the galaxy might never know war again. With a deep breath, Arya made her choice. The relic flared to life as she activated it. But what happened next was not what she expected. Instead of rewriting the K-Tari's biology, the energy surged out of the device in an uncontrolled burst, a storm of raw power that cracked the atmosphere and sent shockwaves rippling through space. Arya's heart raced as she watched the explosion unfold, a brilliant flash of light so intense that it seemed to swallow everything. The ground beneath them shook violently as the energy waves reverberated throughout the galaxy. The planet, Ceta 9, began to shift, its ecosystem rapidly changing, its soil turning fertile, its oceans shimmering with new life. A paradise was born, but it was a paradise that would forever bear the scars of what had transpired. The K-Tari homeworld, once teeming with anger and conflict, was now silent. The warlike species they had been, the memories of their violent history, were gone. In their place, there was only peace. But that peace came at the cost of everything they had known, their culture, their traditions, and the essence of their identity. The blast sent Arya crashing to the ground. The last thing she saw before everything went black was Thalira's face, a mixture of awe and sorrow in her eyes. She'd helped Arya make this decision, but now there was nothing left but the consequences of their actions. When Arya regained consciousness, she found herself lying in the green grass of Ceta 9, surrounded by the ruins of the K-Tari civilization. The once fierce warriors were now pacified, living in harmony with the world around them. They no longer had the drive to conquer or destroy. It was as if their warlike nature had been completely erased, rewritten by the relic's power. But for Arya, there was no triumph in this victory. She had saved the galaxy, but at a cost she couldn't bear to face. Humanity would never know the full story of what had happened on Ceta 9. The truth, the devastating truth about the ancient species and the relic's power, would be buried with her eye in the distance. The remnants of the K-Tari gathered, no longer the warriors they had been, but a new people living in peace. They had no memories of their violent past, no understanding of what they had once been. To them, Arya was nothing more than a distant figure, a shadow in their new, peaceful world. Arya knew that she could never go back to Earth. She was no longer the woman she had been. The war, the relic, the choice, everything had changed her. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. As she stood there, watching the new world she had created, a question lingered in her mind, one that she could never answer. What was the true cost of peace? The galaxy was saved. Humanity was safe, at least for now. But what had been lost? The K-Tari were no longer the threat they had once been, but they were also no longer who they had been. And humanity, where did they fit into a galaxy where war no longer existed? Could peace truly be achieved, or was it simply a brief respite before the next conflict? Arya's thoughts turned inward as she walked through the quiet streets of Ceta 9's new paradise, wondering whether peace was worth the price of erasing everything that had made life worth fighting for. Would it endure, or would the galaxy eventually fall back into chaos? Her final question echoed in the stillness of space. Can peace truly be achieved, or must every species inevitably face the consequences of its own nature? And as the stars blinked quietly above her, Arya understood that this was a question that could never be answered. Only time would tell.